Today for Devotions with Daniella, we are reading from Guinevere Turner's book, When the World Didn't End. Working on this book in my cult book club. I'm going to talk about it tomorrow with Guinevere Turner. I'm so excited. This part is she's out of the cult that she grew up in, and she is trying so hard to pass as normal in the real world. And oh my God, I've had just all of these exact same experiences. It's such a good description. And people ask me sometimes, like, how could I have helped, 15-year-old Daniella? And honestly, I'm like, I don't know, because 15-year-old Daniella was really hiding from looking like she needed help. The name of this book is called When the World Didn't End. The name of the last book that I read is called The Secret Practice. Okay. I had been out in the world for nearly 7 years, and I had effectively erased any external signs of my unusual childhood. I never talked about it at all, which made life so much simpler. I'd learned not to stare, though there were vestiges of the socially unacceptable eye contact. People often thought I was flirting because I still hadn't quite mastered the art of looking away like a native. Too much eye contact is creepy. Just a tiny bit too much eye contact is an invitation, especially if you are a teenage girl. I'd long since stopped bragging about playing the banjo or loving Bill Cosby and the Andrews sisters. And I'd learned to pretend I'd seen the Brady Bunch episode that everyone was reminiscing about. I'd done it. I was passing as a world person. The most important thing to me during this time was the essay I needed to write to apply to college. Guidance counselors advised us that getting into college was now more competitive than ever, and said we should highlight our extracurricular activities, goals achieved, obstacles overcome, and what made us stand out. What made me stand out? In my experience, the question was worded, what makes you different? I had zero athletic achievements. My extracurricular activities were sparse because I'd been in a prison for half my high school experience with her stepfather and enabler mother. My verbal SAT score was nearly perfect, but my math score was embarrassingly low, same, which amounted to an unspectacular total number. I wasn't surprised when I got the scores back because I panicked so much on the math section that halfway through, I asked the fates to tell me if I should fill in the tiny circles next to A, B, or C. The fates, I learned a few weeks later, were also not so good at math. What is unique about me, I thought? I'm good at word games and getting good grades, and men always tell me I'm pretty when I walk down the street, which feels like something I'm good at. I'm good at adjusting. I'm good at making new friends. I'm good at being the person I need to be when I meet people. I'm pretty much good at everything but sports and math. Debate team, essays, participation, lemon squares, turkey tetrazzini, bargello, finding four-leaf clovers, ways of being, hiding the truth, making up lies on the spot, acting like I'm perfectly fine when I'm crumbling inside. So in my book, which I can't find right now, very, very similar thing where I'm talking about how I'm so good at pretending to be fine while I'm literally like just a bag of skin holding all the jagged pieces together. But the interesting thing when we write our essays is that we know that what makes us different is the way we grew up. And even if we're not comfortable saying like it was a cult and it was bad, we know that's going to win the essay competition. We know that we have been through some crap. I'd buried Jessie, cult leaderess, Daria, Clotilde, and the fields, houses, and beaches of my childhood deep. I'd had to pretend to be too many other people since then, but it was dawning on me that absolutely no other person applying to college would have my story. Because I was so unaccustomed to talking about my real life, the prospect of writing about it was exceptionally daunting. I hardly knew what it was to me anymore. It was hard to believe that the thing I'd learned to carefully shut away could now be an asset. I sat at the dining room table in Lloyd's house, compulsively sweeping my hand back and forth over its gleaming varnish, thinking, and what I came up with was that if I didn't talk about the Lyman family and maybe hint at my struggles to escape my mother and FP, I was just a boring girl who had a vague interest in journalism because I thought Barbara Walters was cool. Brian was away as always, and I could hear Lloyd upstairs chuckling at the show Night Court. I really wanted someone to talk to about this, but I barely told either of them anything about the first 11 years of my life, so it didn't seem like an option. I'd pined for the Lyman family for all these years. Why was I hesitating now, when I knew that talking about them might be the thing that got me into college? The answer was that when I pictured the people at colleges reading my essay and being scandalized or fascinated, it made me cringe. It felt cheap to use my story that way. In the end, I chose to write about growing up in the Lyman family, calling it a commune, knowing they would only ever call themselves that to world people, and glossing over what happened to me after I left. It was a challenge to come from being homeschooled and enter the 6th grade, I wrote, but through perseverance and hard work, I am able to be where I am today. As I anxiously handed the manila envelopes with my applications inside to the mailman a few days later, I had the irrational thought that somehow Jesse or someone in the family would read what I'd written and think I was a sellout. So I totally did this exact same thing. I wrote this essay, but I was so terrified that anyone from my family would read it. Fast forward to, I win a bunch of scholarships from my essay, and I have to go to these scholarship banquets, and my parents who've come up to graduation are there with me. I definitely wrote a whole second essay to show to my parents so that they would not see me call it a cult. Despite my mediocre SAT scores, I was accepted to all 4 schools I applied to. I assumed I'd made myself stand out with that essay. Before I applied, my mother said she would take me to visit the campuses of Vassar, NYU, and Barnard, with one caveat: I had to apply to Sarah Lawrence. It was the place I really wanted to go when I was your age, she said, but Granny wouldn't hear of it. She wanted me to have a practical skill, so I went to Northeastern in Boston to study nursing. When she said this, I realized I'd never thought of my mother having dreams, and for the first time, I was seeing how horribly they'd been thwarted. She'd chosen to go to Northeastern University in 1967, where she met some strangers on the street hawking a free alternative newspaper called The Avatar, around the same time she realized she was pregnant with me. And she had decided to devote herself to a group of people because of it. And that's why I was who I was. The randomness of it truly unnerved me.